Okay, well, after more years than I care to think about, I've finally outgrown this little toolbox. So let's fix that. All right, so that should handle that issue. So I may have hinted around a while back at different times that I was looking for a toolbox. I was going to upgrade, so to speak. And if I was going to do it, I wanted to just get ahead and get what I wanted. I wanted a big full tool chest and all that. And that was fine until I started shopping them and shopping pricing and seeing how much you're going to have to pay for something like this. And I got shocked at that, because this stuff is mostly, I'm sure, mostly offshore, comes from offshore and all that, which not all that's bad stuff, but it's probably where it comes from. And there's probably a limited amount of toolbox manufacturers in the world. So I'm thinking, why should I have to pay more for one that says Craftsman or Milwaukee or Matco or something like that? Uh, you know, why should I? Because it's probably just it's 2 or 3 suppliers doing toolboxes. I didn't like that. And so I thought, well, okay, I will get on Facebook Marketplace of Mike Hole there, and I will look around for a toolbox, and maybe I'll just snap a good deal up. Well, there are no good deals because I went looking on there for toolboxes, and me and probably half the other American male populations on there looking for a good deal on a toolbox. So there's none there either. I mean, you're talking about $1,000 for a used toolbox. Maybe it says Matco, maybe it doesn't, maybe it says Craftsman, maybe it doesn't, but the quality has went down on toolboxes in the past decade and a half, something like that. They make them cheaper. It's all about metal gauge. That's the mark, I guess, the hallmark of a good toolbox. So anyway, I thought, what am I going to do here? Because I can't work out of this stuff anymore. I've strung these. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I've strung those little toolboxes along for many years. So, I was in a quandary and I think, well, I don't need a huge toolbox. So I was looking. I was kind of had an idea what I would spend for a toolbox, and I think I cut it off at like $800. And that's for me to spend $800 on something like this is just it's almost like if I got a pair of pliers out and tried to pull out one of my own teeth. I don't know which I would like more or dislike more, but it'd be close to the same because I don't like to spend. I'm not a tightwad necessarily, but I'll give you some backstory on that. All right, back when I was younger, in my late teens and early 20s, and up through my 20s to the late 20s, I'd say, maybe longer than that, maybe into my 30s, I don't quite remember, but I was not good with money, and I ruined or got as close to ruining my credit as I possibly could. I didn't save money. I just made enough money to live on. The story. And related to that is that people that just do that, they live check to check. You feel like you ought to be sorry for them, but have done that and not doing it now. I realize that I heard someone say one time. They said that being poor or being out of money is a state of mind. Some people do that because that's the way they want to live, and that's the way I wanted to live back then. But at some point, I got sick and tired of it, and so the best thing I'm going to tell you, and hear me out here, the best thing I ever did for myself is stop wasting money, because money Money's like a drug. It'll make you feel good for a while when you spend a lot of it, and then it goes away and you're right back where you were, if not worse off. So, you know, I had a friend of mine that used to go to these titty bars. I know that's kind of a crude thing to say about them, but that's what they are. And I never went to them because even back then, that was past my limit of wasting money. I mean, I went with him a couple times, and yeah, it's entertaining, of course. Scenery's nice, but just let's just venture out into this subject here for a little bit while we're talking about the garage stuff. Just sit back and be entertained by a story from my past. So anyway, he liked to do this, and he was one of these people who'd go every week to the TNA bar. We'll say that, and be a little bit nicer about it. and take his check. He'd get paid on a Friday, and off he went. And he drove a VW Beetle. I'm talking about one of the old ones. That was funny too. But so he was just. I mean, bless his heart. I love the guy a lot. He's a great friend. He's passed away now, and he eventually did stop all that. But he was a disaster as far as taking care of his finances. I mean, he's worse than I was. He went way beyond anything I would waste money on. So he would go to these titty bars, and I went with him a couple times, and a couple things happened. Like I said, I started to say that. Here's what happened that swore me off those forever if I ever even wanted to go to them, which I didn't. First thing was, I'd watch these guys, and they'd go in there, and they'd get up to the stage, and they'd lay there, and this gal, poor old cracked out looking gal, she'd get up there and gyrate around, and anyway, it's nothing, there's no action. So I'm saying it's illusion. So that's the first thing. I saw all them up there, and I thought, you know what? You're just going to go home and howl at the moon. If you think one of these gals is going to go home with you after you've been up there 3 or 4, 5, or a dozen times, forget it. So she's going to go home to her husband or her boyfriend or her kid and all that, and you're going to be left out in the cold. So I'm sure as hell not going to waste money on that. The thing with a dollar bill in their lips or in their mouth, it's just ridiculous. So that was that. And then I watched this young lady came over and sat with us, and, I guess the protocol was you're supposed to buy them a drink. So I bought a drink for her. He did. I don't know who it was. Maybe I think it was me, because that's one of the things that swore me off of it. So I bought this gal a drink, and she sat there a while, and I guess she thought I was going to tip her or do something more. No. So I just sat there and just minded my own business, just made small talk. So, presently she got up and left. So I know she didn't touch that drink. So I reached over there and took a swig of it. It was like soda water. It might have had a teaspoon of some kind of booze in it. And I'd paid whatever the going rate was back then, which was high, like $3, $4, something like that for a drink. And I don't know if she shared the revenue from the drinks or what happened, but I thought, oh no. So anyway, long story short, this friend of mine, he'd go home at the end of the night, and he'd have about maybe $50, $25 left out of his paycheck, and he had to make that all through the week. Back when I was younger, you wouldn't believe how many people I ever heard say, well, I only got such and such to make it through the week. And there's a lot of times I had that happen. And, I didn't like it. It's a bad feeling. And it wasn't, I wasn't doing that, but I was frittering money away my own ways. I don't know, just riding around or buying. I think a lot of it was buying beer, because we used to go around and drink and stuff a lot. I think that's where a lot of it went. So, but anyway, back to reality here, sort of close to the present day. So at some point, I just made the decision that I was going to quit all the drinking and the wasting money and the bad credit, and I was going to get things straightened out, and I did. And so I'm in good shape now. I'm not loaded with money, but what that has resulted in is that I am very careful, very pragmatic about spending large sums of money. If I buy something, it's got to be worth it. I mean, it's got to be worth it to me. It's not, my mother used to say, save some, spend some. And that's kind of what I do. But, I'll buy, it's a lot easier for me to buy like a car, like a vehicle or something like this one, or whatever, the stuff I've bought here, that one, whatever, because I know that if I buy it cheap, I can work on it, and I'm not going to lose money on it. It's just not going to happen. So it's kind of it's a whole sphere of stuff about, like, sort of like, I want it to be an investment. I want it to be worth it. I want it to be something I can use. So that's where this toolbox comes in. And this, like I said, $700 for a toolbox, which is not even the highest end toolbox, is a lot for me. So that's where I came from on money, spending on stuff like this, and where I'm at now and why. So they'll give you some background if you wonder about, this is my story and this is where I came from. And I was in a van down by the river. So, I was never destitute, but I was pretty close a couple times. I kept a roof over my head, and I just, I didn't want to do that anymore. So I don't know. People have asked me, how did I change my thinking? And my thinking just went from, what can I buy, to do I need to buy something? You know, and I mean, I'll go to a lot of thrift stores, and I'm very careful about shopping in thrift stores and antique shops and stuff like that, because I look for something that I know that if I ever want to turn it loose and sell it, that I can make some dough on it. And it's not the only reason I do it. I mean, I don't buy like records, or I don't buy stuff normally that's just going to sit there. I buy something like a fan or an old computer or something that I can get some fun out of. So that's kind of the way it works with me on this stuff. So anyway, this thing is, I was looking at dimensions on toolboxes, and these I've been using. These are 24-inch toolboxes. They're 9 inches deep. And you can see how overstuffed it is. And this one is a 41-inch, and it is 24 inches deep, which helpfully is called out right there. And I had an idea when I was headed down there to the Home Depot this morning. I had an idea that I was going to look at these things carefully to see if I could find something damaged and try to get a discount on it, which I did. So this was the floor model, and the inventory thing on it said on these toolboxes, I noticed that it seemed like they're running low on the toolboxes, because some at another place they'd have like the top and they wouldn't have the bottom, or the bottom and not the top, and playing all kinds of games with that. But the first thing I saw when he pulled it out from where it was sitting is this stuff here. I don't think that's supposed to be that way. A little bit of a dent and a dent there, so a little bit of a scuff there. So they knocked $50 off of it, and yeah, pictures or it didn't happen. There it is. So this thing was $698, and they knocked $50 off of it. So the total was $706.32. So it just more or less just basically wiped out the tax I would have paid on it. I think I paid $10, essentially $10 tax on it. So yeah, this should last me. This should outlast me. I'm sure there's gonna be some toolbox elitists that are gonna say, "I wouldn't have bought a Husky toolbox. Oh, you should just wait." No, I shouldn't have done anything, because, like I said, I'm not wealthy, and this is gonna do what I want it to do just fine for a long time, hopefully. I don't even have enough tools to fill this thing up. I mean, my tools are like my toolboxes. They're so. This was a kind of a real challenge to get this out of this truck, and I was kind of getting nervous when I bought this thing. I was looking at it. I was thinking about the back of this truck. I thought, well, boy, I hope that goes in there. I wasn't worried about it going up, which it actually ended up right up against that stuff up there, even. So it barely went in. But the problem is, it was three of us put it in, and there's one of us getting it out. So I tried to get it off here and slide it down off the bumper with a blanket over it, and this thing hinges right here, sort of. So this was trying to tip, so then I was trying to get it to, so it was very close to falling on the floor, like just sliding out of the truck, falling on the floor. So I got stuff under it to hold it, and I took the connectors off and got this thing back in there, and then got that bottom part tipped up. I don't know how much this thing weighs, but they have a little thing over here that gives you some warnings of things not to do. And here's one right here. This is the one that I paid careful attention to. Like, it's up here and you're the little guy down here. Can you imagine what would happen if this toolbox had fallen on me out here? I mean, seriously, it's funny in a way, but it's not funny, because this thing weighs a lot. It probably weighs more than I do. And it'd be like that old woman in the bathroom, or on that Medical Alert commercial that's been on TV for years, and she says, she's sitting in a chair, and she says, yeah, she says, I fell in that bedroom and had to call the thing on her bracelet or her necklace. And I remember there being a story in the newspaper one time. This woman, she almost died because she pulled a dresser over on top of her. So I had to be real careful about this, and I put it back together. I had it over there, and finally got this thing slid back up on here. But so anyway, let's talk about these two toolboxes. So this is the oldest one. This is the first toolbox I ever got, and past like it's just a little carrying toolbox. And it's probably about, I'd say about 20 years old, 20 or 21 years old. And it's faded and has rusted. There's places on the bottom that are rusted, start rusting out, and all that. And the drawers don't, they don't work very well anymore. They're all kind of screwy, and I've stuck stickers all over it, which I don't do anymore. And I've punched it a couple times, kicked it, got mad at the drawers, so it's in poor condition. And the funny thing about this is, look at the top of this. The funny thing about this going on right here is this thing has never been outside. It's been in a garage the entire time I've owned it. And it's still deteriorated like that. So I can imagine if I let it sit outside or something. And then this one's a little bit newer. It's probably, I think I bought this when I lived in Mom's house. So this one's probably about 12 or 13 years old, and it's held up far better. I haven't broken it or anything like that. And so this one, I don't know, like I said, I was nearly destitute back then, so this was a big purchase for me at that time. So this one's probably, it was far under $100, and this one was probably a little bit closer. So this one I'm going to get rid of. I'm going to empty it out and do away with it. If I have to give it to somebody or whatever, somebody wants it, live around here, hit me up. You can have it. But this one I'm going to keep because I can use it, and it kind of matches this one. So anyway, that's the story of the toolbox, my new toolbox, and how I got it, and why it took me so long to buy something like this. And I've got one more thing, good Lord willing, I've got one more thing. I've already got the funds set aside for that. I've got one more thing. This camera's weird. It's when you do that. Why does it do that? One more thing to go in here, which is going to be a big deal. And it's going to be a big deal because I'm going to have to do some other ancillary things to accommodate it. But anyway, all right. Well, we'll get on with this. We'll keep on with this garage here. All right. See you in a second.